Hi boys, so today we are going to do the reflexive pronoun se, literally just spelled S-E. To follow along, go to page 163 of your textbook. The notes start there. I'm just going to try and give you an explanation so that it makes sense, and then you're going to have a go at an exercise. So the last thing that we studied was the pronoun is, ea, id. Which, as we know, means he, she, it. Now, I just want to give you an example sentence using that word compared to using this reflexive pronoun, se. So, for example, if I wanted to say, eum defendo, okay? This means I defend him, okay? And that word eum is in your table of is, ea, id as the accusative masculine form. You could say, I am defendo as well if you really wanted. I defend her, or you could have all the plurals there in the accusative case as well. Now, the difference between that word and the word se is that you use se when an action is happening reflexively. So it's not when one person is doing something to someone else, like they are here, but it's when one person is doing something for themselves, to themselves. So, for example, if instead of saying, I defend him, we want to say, he defends himself, then obviously the verb is firstly going to change to defend it, to make it he defends, because it needs to end in a T. But then instead of saying eum, we use se. And the reason for this is, if you said eum defend it, that would mean he defends him. But the person doing this verb is then different from the person who's being defended. They are two separate people. Whereas with se, that is used when the person doing the verb is also the person receiving the action. So we translate it as he defends himself. Okay, we've used the pronouns me and te and vos and nos previously as the same thing. So if you wanted to say, for example, I defend myself, you would say me, the accusative, defendo. I defend myself. And again, this person doing this verb is the same as this person. Note how me and se look quite similar. If you wanted to say you defend yourself, it would be te defendis, ending in s because it's you. And again, this person doing this verb is the same as this person receiving the action. Okay. So what that means is the words me, te, se, and also nos, we or us, and vos, you plural, can all be used reflexively. Okay, so if I do something to myself, we use me. If you do something to yourself, te. If he, she, or even they do something to themselves, then you use se. If we do something to ourselves, we use nos. And if you do something but you're plural to yourselves, you use vos. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples. Okay, so here are some pretty straightforward examples of Latin sentences using se. So the first one, we have the girl, verb praised, se, herself. The second one, the friends, verb invited, se, themselves. And then the third one, the slaves, lavant wash, se, themselves. Now notice how the translation of se can be different depending on who's doing the verb. So in that first example, se translated as herself. In the second and third, it became themselves. It can also mean himself, itself, etc. The way that you decide how to translate se is because you know it's reflexive, it stands for whoever did the verb in the first place. So this one here, se, must refer to whoever's doing this verb, and we know that here it's the girl that did this verb. Okay, this one must refer to whoever's doing this verb, and we know that it's the friends who do this verb. Okay. Now, to make things a little bit more complicated, obviously we need to know the various cases of se. Now, the nominative of se does not exist, because if you think about it, if you're doing something reflexively, you're never going to need the nominative, because that word se is always going to be receiving some sort of action. The accusative, which is what we've been using so far, is se. Okay, and then we need to fill in, obviously, the genitive, the dative, and the ablative, and they look like this. So the genitive is sui, the dative is sibi, and the ablative, nice and confusingly, is se. So what I'd like you to do is pause this video and write this into your notes at home with the title se. And just notice that some of these endings do make sense. So sibi is very similar to the datives of mihi and tibi. So that one is kind of not a new ending, really. And the rest of the endings, in fact, are very similar, because if you think about the word to, that goes to, te, tui, tibi, te. Ego goes ego, me, mei, mihi, me. So the endings aren't totally out of the ordinary. And all of these will just be translated in the case that they are, and obviously they'll be reflexive. So se is himself, herself, itself, themselves, as we've said already. Sui is of, herself, himself, etc. Sibi is to or for, himself, herself, etc. And se is obviously by, from, with, or in, himself, herself, etc. Once you've written that table, we're going to write out a couple of example sentences that show the variety of these cases. Okay, boys, so just pause the video and write out these 3 Latin sentences, and then we're going to translate them. So, the first one, we have the old man prepared, pretty straightforward, kibum, food, and then sibi, the dative, so we've got to say for himself. And we know it's himself because that sibi will always refer to whoever was doing the verb in the first place, and we know in this case it's the old man. Okay, the soldiers were fighting inter se among themselves. And this time it's themselves because we know that the se is referring to those soldiers. Final one, the master led his friends. Now, secum, do you remember how when we have with me or with you, instead of saying, for example, cum te or cum me, they become tecum and mecum. Well, the same thing happens with come, se, that becomes se come. So this one right here, the master led his friends, se come is just like come se, so with. And here, if you think about it, you don't really need to say with himself, because that doesn't really sound very good in English. The master led his friends with himself. You can just say the master led his friends with him. It means exactly the same thing. Okay, boys, so your notes so far should have the table here and then those 3 examples. I'd also like you to add this information at the bottom just so that you can make sure you fully explained it to yourself in your notes. So se is the reflexive pronoun. It always refers to whoever is doing the verb. It is often translated as self. Okay, but as we noted with that 3rd example, it doesn't always have to be translated as self. Now I want you to go have a go at exercise 534 on page 165. Pause this video, give yourselves time to do it. Please write out the Latin and then you can play the video to reveal the answers. Okay guys, so let's go through the exercise. Make sure you're not looking at this until you've answered the question yourself. There's no point cheating. So the first one, our soldiers bravely defend themselves. Okay, so se has to refer to those soldiers because we know that they're the guys doing the verb. Nostri, remember, means our. Okay, number 2, our leader, numquam, never prepares food for himself because we've got sibi, the dative there. And again, that's referring to the doer of the verb, so it must be him, i.e. our leader. Number 3, the stupid sailors, clamabant, were shouting Diu for a long time among themselves. Number 4, the old man often laughs or smiles, dative, sibi, to himself. And then number 5, the kings, duxerunt, led, multas naves, many ships with them. If you translated this as many kings, look at that ending. Multas is accusative and it's feminine, and those kings are nominative and masculine. So be careful there. Any questions, boys? Let me know.